Now, other interesting culture news, you have Bud Light with their latest Dodo tweets, which I know history scores at all-time low in the United States. A dodo is an extinct bird that was basically, it's no longer around because it's uncompetitive in the landscape. Poorly designed, well, depending on your belief system, engineered, designed by God, or evolved naturally, depending on your belief system. But wasn't a very good design, and it kind of just, it's no longer around. U.S. also, not the U.S., but many people also hunted them, and, well, you can also debate that's the same line of they couldn't fend off predators. But I digress. Bud Light is certainly a contender for that metaphor since, well, that's more self-inflicted, but they're trying to dig themselves out of this hole. It's not working too well. So Bud Light famously, April 1st, not a joke, hired Dylan Mulvaney as their brand ambassador or spokesman. And this person, Dylan, was many people pejoratively considered to pretend in their mind to be a woman by dressing up as a woman and doing actually more than cliche woman things, like saying it was Dylan's whatever day of being a woman, and saying that Dylan cried because of an email. So if anyone else did, it'd be very sexist and very misogynist or stereotypical. But some people appreciated the fact that Dylan was doing that and thought it was beautiful. And to celebrate Dylan's 365 day of doing that, Bud Light gave Dylan a can. If you noticed, I'm not using Dylan's pronouns. It's because YouTube will flag and actually delete the videos if you use them. Now, we're not monetized yet. I hope we get monetized someday, so I'll probably have the unfiltered version. We'll start uploading those on Rumble. But it is very similar, reminiscent of 1984 with Newspeak, where someone hits you with they shock not to give away the book, but the main protagonist actually shock him electrically until he acquiesced and he says 2 + 2 in fact equals 5. Many people feel it's a very accurate metaphor. Now, I keep telling people, please do not make this a drinking game with 1984 because you won't just pass out. I don't even think you would survive. That's not a challenge, it's a health warning. But unfortunately, that book is reminiscent of today's society, if not actually mild compared to today's society. But I digress. Bud Light chose that, and they lost about $28 billion in stock. So their stock valuation dropped by $28 billion. They're losing sales left and right. After 20 years of being number one beer, no longer number one beer by sales in the United States. They're now, I believe, number 14 by last sales figures. So they're not doing great. Now, they're trying to combat this, and Brendan Whitworth, the CEO, trying to be a politician. He's really not saying anything, which is what he has to do, unfortunately, in this situation, because if he says we made a big mistake, the people on the left will protest him. They already are. And if he says nothing, the people on the right are going to protest him because they already did this. So they're quite literally stuck between a rock and a hard place. They're trying to get out of it with marketing, which is one of the most fascinating things in business. I always like to compare it to the Rubik's Cube of business. I mean, there's a few things you don't know what will work, some might not. This idea certainly did not seem prudent, and of course, the Alyssa Heiserchild, the marketing manager who came up with this brilliant business idea, or marketing idea, she's still on unpaid leave of absence is the nice way that they're putting it. And yeah, I'll be interested to see. She might get a job at Starbucks though, or some other company that believes in the things she did. But in terms of sales figures, she irreversibly damaged the company. So their thought is, okay, new marketing campaign. We're going to put out cliche pro-Americana commercials, and we're going to keep tweeting. Not learning their lesson, perhaps, because they went about 2 months without tweeting, which in social media is like 20 years. So they've been trying to put out more tweets more frequently the past couple of weeks. Maybe every couple of days they're sending out a tweet, but they just immediately get ratioed. And it's fascinating to see not only they get ratioed, but the few positive ones I almost think are fake. Now, this goes back to today's topic, which is their Dodo tweet of the day. Well, bi-weekly, or every other day, depending on how many times they tweet. Now, it looks like they specifically tweeted, not a picture, just a phrase that says, quote, "Only 8 days to NFL, but who's counting?" unquote. Now, that specific tweet, or X, whatever you want to call it, after Elon renamed the company, that got 159,000 views in the first 24 hours and 526 likes. Now, I know math scores in the US are all-time low, so we'll do a little math together. That is 0.33% liked. So 0.33% of people who saw that post liked it. Now, interestingly enough, the top responses, which showed that it got ratioed, the youth call that a phenomenon in which the responses that are pejorative towards the original post are actually more popular than the original post. Now, some of the top ones are from a tweeter by the name of Core of Apathy, in which this person actually tweeted out a chart with all the brands owned by Anheuser-Busch InBev, and then a little winky emoji saying don't forget which one they still own. And that got about 5,000 views and a couple hundred likes. Now, the other very popular one was from a user by the name of lordpeak.eth. And this one said, quote, counting your losses by the billions, unquote. That got 4,355 views and 107 likes. So, good old math scores, that's 2.46% of people who saw that view liked it. Now, to go from there, you also have one from Guitar, which I'd say B plus for marketing because obviously it's an account that cares much about guitars and apparently beer. Now, this user said, quote, can't wait for the NFL, Sunday afternoon relaxing with a cold Yingling, unquote. Yingling being a far superior beer, many would say. Still family owned, headquartered, I believe, still in Pennsylvania. Been around. It's the oldest brewery still in the United States that's been around. So it's still family owned. I actually bought my first case ever, I believe, 2 weeks ago. I mean, I'm not a big drinker, but I hanged out with some folks and I had I think it was a light beer, which I know some would say is an abomination of beer in and of itself, but to me it tastes pretty good. Now, that tweet saying that, going to have that cold Yingling, that got 2,465 views and 90 likes. Now, good old math calculator will tell us that's 3.65% of people liked that who viewed it. Now, interestingly enough, someone actually posted a poll as a response to Bud Light. And this poll was from Richard Money, and his poll said, beer and NFL, awesome. What will you be drinking? Option 1 of the 2 things you could vote for was 1, make mine a Bud Light. Option 2, no Anheuser-Busch InBev. Now, of the 2,281 people who voted in this, 93.6% of the people said no Anheuser-Busch InBev, which is pretty astronomically bad. Granted, when it comes to polls, you always have to ask yourself, what's the sample size relative to the United States population? 2,281 votes is pretty small. Also, you don't know the demographics. It might be a certain group of people, might be a certain group of gender or geographic location. There are a lot of things that go into that might skew the poll to not give you an accurate representation of the whole United States, as the United States is one of the most diverse countries on the planet, where you can go from state to state and you have drastically different beliefs, ideals, and philosophies. But it is interesting to think so many people are negative against this. And this is with them still censoring a lot of the more entertaining responses where you have Alyssa Heiderscheld standing over a grave, doing a little peace sign with the little headstone on the grave saying, Anheuser-Busch inception date to, died this year. Now, the few responses that were positive, and I'd say there were about 3 or 4 that I could find. There were not that many, of course. Now, one then said, yes, baby, who's ready for some? In response to Bud Light saying, hey, you ready for our beer? And that got 3 likes out of 2,818 views. It says 0.11%, so less than Bud Light with their original tweet. Now, I looked in this profile, and that profile seemed to exclusively retweet company stuff. So, I don't know if it's a bot or someone who just specifically shills for specific companies. I don't know if there's any upside or incentives on the back end, but it was strange that this individual seemingly only retweets positive things about companies. Now, another profile said, quote, as a response to Bud Light, can't wait, thanks Bud Light. Which that's got to be like a Bud Light employee, I swear. Now, that got 7,450 views. So that's a lot of views. You got 6 likes. And keep in mind, these are all numbers taken at about the same time rate within 24 hours of the original post. So there's not any skew in that regard. So, again, math scores out all-time low. We'll do it together. 6 likes out of 7,450. That's 0.08% of people who saw that post liked it. Now, that person who tweeted it, they're also suspicious as well. If you click on their profile, they seem to exclusively only do retweets for a handle called Millions, and they only have 97 followers. Now, granted, I'm not one to toot my own horn. I don't have a copious amount of followers on Twitter. I think I have like 290 something, give or take. And if you follow me, you'll see some moderately entertaining views and see a little bit about the kind of the signage behind me for the podcast room and mainly business history and interesting stuff like that. And you follow me at NICTOPPING if you want to see me on the Twitter. And it's interesting, the only couple positive tweets or response tweets we got to this Bud Light post they barely seem human. So I don't know if they're bots or if it's a Bud Light employee. Granted, they only have. We're going to see some massive layoffs at Bud Light. They are already destroying the ecosystem with bottling plants closing because people aren't buying as much Bud Light as they used to. Distributors are suffering, struggling. So we only have 2 months of this boycott, or 2.5 months, maybe 2 months and a week and a half in terms of sales data, as the data is delayed because of the nature of the business being distributed and the indirect sales business model. But it'll be interesting to see how much worse will it get. And I mean, the CEO claims there's nothing to be worried about, but that's also kind of his job as well. But we shall see. They perhaps will be the contender for the business blunder of the century, or at least of the year for the show. Let me know if you think it'd be a good idea to maybe make an official trophy for them. Time shall tell. Thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in today. Really want to thank you for taking time to subscribe. We're trying to get to 3,000 subscribers by the end of July. We still have a little bit of time to do that. Also, don't forget to like and comment. The feedback is greatly appreciated. It also helps with the algorithm, with the videos getting shared more. Also, don't forget to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.